How's it going, guys and geeks? Welcome to Geekritique. My name is Dakota. This video is a bit of a different one, and admittedly I was planning on covering this topic in our next Timeline Journal entry number 3, but with the James Gunn news, I thought that this deserved its own video entirely. That being said, if you've followed us here at Geekritique for some time, you probably know about our MCU Timeline series and how we've been a big proponent of keeping the Marvel TV series into our complete MCU timeline. If you'd like to follow us in our efforts in continuing to map the MCU timeline between the bigger, complete MCU videos that we do, please be sure to check out our Timeline Journal series, because we do go in depth into things that we're adding, things that we're changing, things that we're moving around, and the new format that we're going to be doing for the future of our timeline videos. So please be sure to check that out right there. Also, please don't mind my voice. I've actually been pretty sick the past couple days. But if you'd like to wish me a swift recovery, a simple like or a comment would do nicely. And of course, if you'd like to see my sickness consume me, well then I guess that's what the dislike is for. So, there you go. Before we start covering James Gunn's role in the discussion of whether or not these pre-Disney Plus TV shows were part of the MCU or not, it's important to note that he's not actually the first writer to share these sentiments from the MCU side of things. A couple weeks ago, after it was discovered that, according to Loki and the TVA, there was supposedly only one timeline, the sacred timeline, where our heroes reside, Michael Waldron, the main writer for the series as well as the writer for the forthcoming Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, was asked if he toyed with the idea of Mobius suggesting that Coulson was resurrected after Loki stabbed him in the back. This, of course, would help canonize Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D, as it would be a direct reference from a Marvel Studios project to a Marvel television project. Waldron's response is interesting. No, look, that is one other tendril of the multiverse, perhaps. I think just seeing mention of Coulson again, the very fact that it raises those questions, is exciting. And there you have it, the writer in charge of opening the MCU up from a single sacred timeline to a multiverse of madness, claims that Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D, as well as all the other spin-off shows between ABC, Hulu, Freeform, and Netflix that sprung out of the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D TV series, are not part of the sacred timeline. At least that's how I understand that quote. It's possible that Waldron is mistaken, and that he isn't the end-all, be-all when it comes to determining what's MCU canon or not. That privilege resides solely with Kevin Feige, who we'll be discussing in a second. But this could be interpreted as the first official word from an MCU creative stating whether or not the shows do indeed belong to the sacred timeline or not. And in this respect, Waldron claims that the shows are not in the sacred timeline, which is a term that needs defining. From here on out, we'll be discussing spoilers for the sacred timeline and Loki just for a bit, and then we'll discuss the comments that James Gunn made. Loki claims that the omniscient timekeepers converged all the timelines into one singular sacred timeline, thus doing away with the multiverse. But with episode 4, we've now seen an entirely alternate timeline where Sylvie has lived her entire life a female variant of the sacred timeline's Loki. How could she exist in her reality as a female if there were no other timelines other than the sacred timeline? The TVA propaganda shows us a number of examples of strange variants that grow out of the sacred timeline branches, but that doesn't explain why each variant would have their own memories and cultures and appearances to back up their existence. But we also know the TVA is lying to their own agents and hunters as to their true origin, so I'm going to guess here and now that the Timekeepers haven't truly merged the multiverse into one true timeline, but that all the multiverse still exists, and they're simply a force that keeps the multiverse from encroaching onto the sacred timeline, and as a deterrent from creating new branches off the sacred timeline. I don't really know, it's a best guesstimation at this stage. But think about it this way. If we get the Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield Spider-Man in Spider-Man No Way Home, as has been heavily rumored, they would have whole histories, love lives, friends, and foes that they've experienced, and they clearly aren't just offshoot variants of Tom Holland's Spider-Man. If Tom Holland's Peter turned left when he should have turned right, creating two separate paths, one of those Peters aren't going to suddenly look like Andrew Garfield. There would simply be two Tom Hollands. The whole thing is confusing. What I'm trying to say is, just because Sylvie, the female variant of Loki, isn't from the sacred timeline, doesn't mean she isn't a canonical part of the MCU, or that the Tobey or Andrew Spider-Man won't suddenly become part of the MCU if they're included, though they're clearly not from the sacred timeline. Keep that in mind now as we continue, but I think there are now two definitions of MCU. One is everything that exists within the sacred timeline, and two is the entire multiverse that also includes the sacred timeline. Now on to James Gunn, writer and director of the Guardians of the Galaxy trilogy, and his comments. A couple days back, he took to Twitter to compile a list of actors who've been in both the MCU and the DCEU. There's quite a few, though the list is by no means lengthy. That said, he wanted to clarify that he meant only MCU and DCEU, not the additional Marvel or DC universes. So from this we can surmise that James Gunn is referring to the MCU definition that only includes the sacred timeline and not the multiverse definition of the MCU. Sean Blake tweeted to add John Glover to this list, as he's been both part of Shazam and Agent Carter. Gunn reiterated that he's not including pre-WandaVision shows in the MCU. Another user, Super Marvel 19, argued Agent Carter and Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. are MCU, wherein Gunn retorted with a "according to whom?" The user claimed, "according to Marvel," also according to Disney so far, but whatever you want to watch. This is where James Gunn makes the most damning claim yet. There was never any coordination between the earlier TV stuff and the cinematic side of Marvel, like there is now that they're all under the purview of Marvel Studios. We know this isn't 100% true, as there was a modicum of communication between the early years of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and Phase 2 of the MCU.
The studio is somewhat involved in the creation of the scripts, in that they say, "Oh, hey, we want to do this, we want to do that. Is that going to step on anything?" to make sure that all of our ducks are in a row.
This was an interview from 2014, and even up until 2015, Feige seemed at least somewhat eager to discuss how the show was affected by the MCU, but always under the context that it was a Jeff Loeb project, and not his.
The truth of the matter is, Jeff Loeb runs our television division, and it's one of the rare cases where I get to sort of sit back and watch it like a fan.
This continued to be the case even up to the start of the Netflix series.
Early reviews, reactions to Daredevil last night were kind of crazy. Is there an incentive for you to kind of bring the Defenders into the world of the films?
Into the movies?
Yeah.
No, well, I mean, right now, what Jeff Loeb and the TV guys are doing is focusing on those shows.
If we're to take Gunn's tweet as some new light on the matter of the actual levels of coordination between Marvel Studios and Marvel TV, it does help us understand why the discussion between the studio and the television division was so delayed or late. For instance, the showrunners didn't know that Marvel Studios planned to disband the S.H.I.E.L.D. organization in Captain America: The Winter Soldier until very late in the production of their first season, which explains the huge pivot of the story in the first season's second half. And by the show's final few seasons, it seemed to entirely depart from the MCU's bigger events. But that being said, it also can't be ignored the many MCU actors that made the jump into the show during the first few seasons, or that Feige was a credited producer on Agent Carter. And with the rumors of Daredevil popping up in Spider-Man No Way Home, and with the rights of those Netflix heroes now firmly in Marvel Studios' hands, it's left many hoping these shows would all remain canon in the MCU, as Jeff Loeb and Marvel TV have deemed them to be for many years. And I think they will be, but with a very unique caveat. We know the multiverse is coming, and will be a huge part of the story of Phase 4. I believe we're going to discover that all Marvel projects, including the two Sony universes of Spider-Man films, spin-offs, Fox's X-Men universe, and all that will be connected to the sacred timeline in that they are part of the greater multiverse of live-action stuff. This may very well include a similar universe to the sacred timeline wherein the Marvel TV shows are located. Eventually, I think the multiverse will be reorganized and certain aspects of these different universes will be added to the primary or sacred timeline, which the TVA currently call Earth 616.432. More info on that in this video I broke down over here. But it's important to note that this is exactly what Loki writer Michael Waldron said about Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., that it's another tendril of the multiverse, perhaps. I've long worried that the MCU TV shows would be retconned from canon. I even mentioned that in our most recent complete MCU timeline video, version 6.5. Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Season 6 will just have to go here until they explain themselves. It is supposedly a year after the snap, but there's no reference to it in the slightest, and nobody appears affected. This may be the last iteration of this timeline where these shows are all considered canon, unless something further is clarified. I take James Gunn's tweets and Michael Waldron's comments as clarification, honestly. It's been a long time coming, from the strained creative relationship between Feige and Perlmutter, the separation that Marvel Studios and Marvel TV faced in 2015, to the canceling of all the Marvel TV shows and the absorbing of Marvel TV into Marvel Studios in 2019. And now finally these comments from two current and influential writers within Marvel Studios, who have first-hand and regular discussions with the man behind it all, Feige, and are no doubt echoing his own sentiments. That said, I take Waldron's comments as more interesting and poignant. Whereas Gunn seemed unnecessarily dismissive and tribal, Waldron's response lent us an olive branch of hope that these shows can live on canonically through the multiverse. I'd hate to see these shows that you and I have spent so much time finding connections with the MCU suddenly relegated to less than what they were marketed and purported to be. I want to keep these shows on my complete MCU timeline, but I may just have to make a separate timeline that includes the multiverse. That would be crazy, but I think it'd be worth it. Throughout the year, as we learn more about the multiverse and how it works, it will be a huge insight into how things will play out for the pre-Disney Plus MCU shows. What are your thoughts? I'd love to hear them. If you've made it this far, please be sure to drop a comment about hurricanes. Nobody seemed to have caught this detail in episode 2 of Loki, but the Roxxcart apocalypse was much more terrifying than it seemed. According to this news report, this is the storm of the millennium, as two hurricanes collide over Alabama. One was a Category 9 hurricane with sustained winds of over 220 miles per hour, and the second was a Category 8 with sustained winds of over 200. This is called the Fujiwara effect, when two giant storms merge together. In real life, there is no classification greater than a Category 5 because storms that exceed speeds of 155 mph winds are very rare, but according to Loki, our near future will see much greater storms and more frequently. Even the Marvel Wiki didn't catch this detail, as they only list a single hurricane. So be sure to type hurricane in your comment down below. Also, please don't forget to like this video, it really does help the channel out, and subscribe if you haven't already. And if you like more breakdown type videos, I have this really cool one that I know a lot of you didn't watch because it has very few views, but definitely check it out. It's a little tiny Easter egg within Loki episode 2 that I think will tell you a lot about how Guardians of the Galaxy 3 is going to play. So click that link right there, and have a good one, guys. Bye.